We have an acronym we want to share with you, which is a guide through these questions. You will use this for the rest of your life. This will be exciting for you. It'll allow you to start this conversation with anybody, anywhere, at any time. That'll be a very pleasant conversation. It's an acronym of FORD, Ford we call it. The F of the acronym talks about family. So when I meet somebody and we've introduced each other, I'll just start asking questions about family. And they're not real deep personal questions. They're questions like, do you live around here? How long have you been here? If they're not from there, where'd you come from? How do you like it out here? Do you have many other relatives in the area? So I'll ask them some questions, and people like talking about that, and they think it's very interesting. Do you miss back home much? Now, we normally don't ask people if they're married. That can be a very touchy subject because we've got all kinds of marriage situations out there. We got people who are married, people who are unhappily married, people who are in troubled marriages, people who are divorced. We have people living together and they're not married, and that might be embarrassed to be asked that question. We have people who are widowed, gay marriages. So we don't even go there for now, and we don't need to ask that question. It will oftentimes come up as they start sharing their details, but I don't ask that question. So after we've asked questions for a while, we just listen attentively. We're not talking about ourselves or telling our story. After talking about family for a while, then we ask the question about occupation. That's the O. It's occupation, and we'll add outside to that. So we don't ask people, well, where do you work? Because some people might be unemployed and that could be embarrassing to them. So it's safer to ask, what line of work are you in? They could say, well, I'm a teacher. Now, if they're out of work and they want to tell me that, that's up to them, but I don't have to ask that. So what line of work are you in? And then ask some more questions about their line of work. Well, how long have you been teaching? How did you get into teaching? What grade or subjects do you teach? Teaching must be really hard. I mean, what's the hardest part of teaching? What do you like best about teaching? So I can show some interest in whatever their occupation is. And, you know, another scenario is if it's somebody I know what their job is, it's my doctor, and I'm not going to ask them, well, what line of work are you in, or my computer repair person. So with them, I already know what their occupation is. So, but I follow with the other questions. You know, I'm just curious, how did you get into medicine? And when did you know you wanted to get into medicine? What's the best part of being a doctor? And so I can just ask some general questions like that. I'm showing interest in them. And people love being asked questions about their lives, as long as it's not too personal and a little silly. Then we can talk about outside. That's the second part of this O. So I can go on and ask them, do you have any outside activities or interests, hobbies, sports, anything like that? And if they share that they do have some, I can ask some more questions. Well, how'd you get in that? How do you like it? Again, I'm asking and listening, paying attention to what they're saying. R of Ford is religion. Now I'm going to ask them, I'm just curious, do you have any religious background? And I found out over the years, people are happy to talk about that. Now, if I started with that, it might be more complicated. People might feel like, oh no, I just got trapped by some religious guy here, and he wants to talk about religion. But as we work up through F and O, I found out that people are comfortable talking about R at this point. So I listen. Some have a short story. Well, I don't have any. Some have a story where they've been a part of every denomination or church that's in our town. But I'm just listening, paying attention. I'm not grilling them. There may be some questions. Well, how did you get into that? What do you like about it? What does that require of you in your life? You're also going to find some people who are disgruntled. They used to be very active in some religion, but they dumped it all. And so with those people, I say, well, what happened? And what drove you away? Oftentimes I can say, well, I probably would have left if that had happened to me too. So I'm listening to whatever the story is, and people are happy, even if they're disgruntled, they're happy to share that story. They love telling that story. So that can be another scenario where they're disgruntled. So after I'm listening to their story, I'm just guarding all this information in my head. I'm not acting shocked or trying to criticize whatever the religion or philosophy that they may be part of. I'm just listening. sincerely interested. Now we're ready for the letter D in the acronym FORD. D stands for discovery. So in this part, I'm going to discover if the person is interested in sitting down with me and listening to our studies called The Answer. So after I've talked about religion and respond to that, then I want to move into D. I like to call D the golden key that unlocks some almost impenetrable doors. It's a question. And I've been asking people this question for decades, and I can't remember a time when in this order anybody ever acted offended or upset that I was asking them this. In fact, I like to think this could be one of the most loving things you could ever possibly do for another person. You're simply going to ask them a question and then make them an offer. You have to learn this question. You just need to memorize it. It's not real complicated. So I prepare the people for the question a little bit this way. I say, I'd like to ask you a tough question. Really makes you stop and think. And here's the question. Do you feel like you've come to the place in your own life where you could say for sure that if you were to die today, you'd go to heaven? Just stop and then wait for an answer. Most people, even religious people, are going to respond, well, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or no, or definitely not me. So I'm looking for the person that's got some kind of no or doubt in their response to the question. If they show some negative response, a no or some version of that, then I ask them the next logical question, and you need to learn this. It seems so obvious. They said, no, they're not sure. Then I ask, if you could be sure, would you want to be? I can tell you from my experience, 9 out of 10 people are going to say, yes. Yeah, I'd like to be sure of that. Then I'm ready to make an offer. Now see, I've created interest on their part. I've come down to a subject that is at the heart of life. Am I going to live forever? It's about the question we asked way back at the beginning. Have you come to the place in your own life where you could say for sure that if you were to die today, you'd go to heaven? I know of one man who was asked that question. The studies were set up for 2 weeks later, and he got together with the man doing the studies, and he said, hey, remember that question you asked me? I said, yeah. He said, that question has haunted me for 2 weeks. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. That's what we want to happen with people. We want them to think about the most important thing in their life. If you could be sure, would you want to be? Yeah. Then I say this, if you would be interested, I'd be glad to get together with you and take you through some studies we have that show you what the Bible says a person needs to do to be sure that when they die, they'll go to heaven. Would you be interested in that? And just wait. It surprises me how many people I've met and connected with outside of the church campuses, and they say yes. And if they say yes, then we set up the studies. Normally starting the next week, and that's intentional. I rarely start the same day or the next day. I want them to have more time to think about this. It actually builds trust on their part. So if they're interested, we set up the time and the day, and I don't keep pressing the subject. I go on to something else then. I say, good. How do you like how your favorite sports team's doing right now? And I take the pressure off them. I've accomplished my goal. My goal is to see if I can set up the studies to go through with them. And that is D, discovery.